Hello, I'm Ramesh, a seasoned veteran with 27 years of experience in the dynamic world of IT. Throughout my illustrious career, I've had the privilege to lead global teams at renowned giants like Sun Microsystems, EMC, and Dell Technologies. But today, I'm here to embark on a new, thrilling journey with you all. In an era where the digital realm has transformed how we access information, I am excited to introduce you to the Leadership Sirius Show. This podcast is my brainchild, an opportunity for us to dive deep into the experiences and journey of several remarkable minds in the corporate world, accomplished entrepreneurs, and technology trailblazers, and leaders who have paved their own path to success. Picture this, this is your backstage pass into the insights, strategies, and stories of these visionaries who have navigated the turbulent waters of the business world and emerged triumph. So, are you ready? Are you excited? Do you want to be part of this journey, this remarkable journey that we're going to have together? I'm super excited and I hope you are too. But here's the thing, to keep the golden nuggets of wisdom flowing from all our esteemed guests, I will need your support. If you like this video, if you want more of these incredible stories and invaluable advices, consider joining our community. It's simple. All you need to do is hit on the subscribe button and turn on notification. But more than all, I hope you continue to tune in because your viewership means the world to me. Welcome aboard, my friends. Hello and welcome to the Leadership Sirius Show. Today, our guest is Vivek Rajendran. He comes with a wealth of experience spanning across 30 years as product development leader and as an early entrepreneur. Hello, Vivek. Welcome to the Leadership Sirius Show.
Hi, Ramesh. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So you come from a army family, right? Army background, right? So what has been your life like? I mean, as a kid to, as you grew up, how has that journey been?
Oh, it's been awesome. The army life is, okay, to be clear, my dad was in the army, not me. But we were the army family, right? So the interesting part is that you move lock, stock, and barrel every 2 years, whether you like it or not, right? So you learn a lot of things. You can't take too long to become friends, to make friends.
Yeah.
So that has taught me how to connect quickly. You learn to put everything into small boxes so you don't have big things that you collect. So you're very portable, very easy to move around. And the most important thing that I would think that I have learned from being in the army or the army family has been discipline, right? And I think that's something that has carried all through my life.
And how has that discipline actually helped you? I mean, what difference it has made to you in your personal and professional life?
Oh, so many examples. Let me give the simplest example. How many times have you seen people saying, oh, I don't have time to do this studies, or I don't have time to unlearn and relearn? The discipline required for that, it's not difficult to do, it's just a question of prioritization. But if you have discipline to do that, you will do it, right? And it's easy to achieve. I have done that many, many times. Even in my work life today, my calendar actually has time slots where I actually go stop, go study, and go learn. Right? And it could be anything. So it comes down to discipline, right? So discipline has helped me in many, many ways. This is just one example.
So has it just been the discipline, or is there anything else that has actually added on other than discipline? Army is known for discipline, right? So that comes across very clearly. But is there anything that has made a mark in terms of your professional career that gives you an edge? Right? Do you think something that is, if you're a non-army family, you might have to put in a little more effort to learn and be cognizant about, what's happening in that space versus you as an army, which coming from an army family comes very naturally to you?
Regimen, I think I would say regimen. Everything has got a time and a place. My dad used to be very, very strict with all of us when we were kids about what happens at what time of the day. You go for your morning run, everything. All that regimen is something that you learn very early in life. I think personally, my opinion is that if you're not in that context, chalta hai. I mean, I'll skip today. It's okay. That it's okay attitude never works in the army.
Yeah.
It's there is no choice. Go do it, right? So that discipline, if you will, along with regimen, killer combination.
You're also an early entrepreneur, right? Was Army something to do with it as to how it triggered, or is it something that you were curious about and you wanted to learn and you did something about it?
I was just downright lazy. Didn't like school, didn't like college. College is actually boring. Okay, let me take it back. College was actually interesting for people in a very different mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I entered college in a very different mindset, and I didn't get the subject that I wanted, but I had very nice mentors, right, who gave me access. I did industrial engineering, which is no way related to what I'm doing today, but I always liked electronics. I always liked control engineering. And the fact that I had a head of department in the college was he recognized me that the talent that I had, and gave me access to a lot of the labs that I normally would not have had access to. So that was more exciting about college than what the college was actually. I know I shouldn't be saying this, but for the younger generation, but hey, college gives you a lot of foundation and grounding, but I enjoyed that place. So I was getting bored very quickly. I wanted to challenge myself, so that's when I started my company when I was in the second year of college.
Oh wow, and second year of your college you started off? Yeah. Wow. I knew that you started off early, but I didn't know it was this early, right? Yeah. That was good.
It was, very, very early, but it was just awesome experiences. Gained a lot of experiences. I think that's one of the foundational aspects that I would like to bring and pass on to people, is that collect as many experiences as you can.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, right? I mean, the whole entrepreneur, I think we spoke to a few of the folks, and this is something that is consistently coming across, right? The experiences, the early entrepreneurial venture gives you a lot more insight, the breadth in terms of the business aspect, the technology aspect of it, the people aspect of it, the relationships, all of these things kind of come together, when you go through this.
True.
So what was your early learnings as part of your venture into entrepreneurship?
There is no role definition. You're the coffee boy, you're the janitor, you're the technologist, you're the CEO, you're the sales guy, you're everybody, right? You need to be part of every single thing that's part of the business. You cannot stay away from an area. Everything is intertwined. That was a big eye-opener for me, right? The fact that you have to learn everything. You can't be just good in one area. It doesn't help.
And that is because you feel, due to compulsion, as in, you're an early entrepreneur, you do not have staff to do things, so you Absolutely. End up doing things, or is it more to do with, these are giving its own set of experiences and actually making you stronger and better?
In the early days, you're a team of one, literally, right? You have nobody there to do everything for you. But as you grow, right, and you start having a larger set of people, you need to have respect or acknowledge the kind of work that they do. So you have to have a flavor for it. Otherwise, you'll never appreciate it, right? And therefore, I wouldn't say that I was the best sales guy, I was the best coffee boy, or I was the best, no. But I knew enough to understand the value of it. And as the business grew, the company grew, the appreciating of when somebody does something, no matter how big or how small, doesn't matter, right? You know how difficult it was, right? That appreciation was very, very important. So I'll just go back to Ramesh.
Sure.
One quick point. It just struck me when you said with the Army thing, and it kind of related to me now. I'm surprised it came to me now, but it popped into my head now. The other thing the Army family teaches you is never be scared.
Yeah.
Go experiment, go try. I've done stupid things, really stupid things, but the learnings from those have been incredible. And I don't know if I would have done that if I didn't have this kind of a backing or the background, if you will, right? We have seen crazy things happen in all kinds of places. The fact that you think you've been exposed to that, you're not scared of it, you want to try it out. Yeah, I mean, I've tried mucking around with 29,000 volts on an ultra high voltage scanner that almost burnt my neck off.
Wow.
But that taught me a lot of things, right? Respect the damn thing, right? So it was nice.
Or else get a jolt.
Yes, you're going to get a jolt.
Yeah.
So a lot of things like that has experiences along the way has formed a lot of the thoughts and experiences.
So what you're saying is, one needs to be willing to take risk,
Yes.
right? And one needs to be willing to learn, right, and move forward from it, right? So, then you kind of moved into the corporate world. So when you had these learnings, why did you switch from entrepreneurship to, you started off early with entrepreneurship and you had some success out there. So why was the switch into corporate when you got out of your college?
So I was probably very young and naive, and what happened for me was that a lot of the learnings or my day-to-day activities were largely around running from one office to another office to another office, another one tax office. It was just a lot of that activity which it wasn't really exciting me enough, right? My passion has always been in control system engineering. Across all of my 30 plus years, 3 decades of my thing has always been connected with control system engineering, be it hardware, firmware, software, whatever, right? So I felt I was losing that, right? I was losing the edge on that. I was always way ahead of the curve in many ways, and I really felt I was losing the edge. And so that's when I took a very conscious call, and I had a very good mentor actually, so helped guide me through this minefield, if you will, right? And helped me make that decision, if you will, to transform from a entrepreneur to a corporate, working in a corporate company, right? That was a very, very difficult but very nice.
Yeah. It's also interesting, right? I think when you look at it, many, even in the corporate world, who have spent reasonably good amount of time, are not so much aware or do not understand the importance of mentor. But you kind of figured out having a mentor early during your college itself, right? So how has that shaped your life? And if you can throw some light in terms of the importance of having a mentor and how that has shaped your life in terms of be it entrepreneurship or your career itself, right?
The simplest thing I would say is, if there was a single important or the critical thing a person should have, is a really good mentor. The rest you can pick up. But if you have a good mentor, he or she can guide you into places that you normally would not have extended yourself. The analogy I like to use is like, you're in a dark room. A mentor is somebody who can bring light into that room. The mentor is not necessarily going to take you and push you to that corner or take you to that place or this place. Not going to happen that way, right? But the mentor is going to shine the light. And it could be a candlelight. It's good enough. We're in a totally dark room. A candlelight is quite bright. Right? So at least a mentor would guide you and show the light of the opportunities that you may not have otherwise experienced. And like I said, the same example I was talking about earlier, I don't know if I would have made the transition from the entrepreneur to, I was having a good life, right? And then going to as an engineer, reporting to someone else, it was a big thing. And I'm not going to say it was easy. Yeah. It was tough. There were times I was ready to throw in the towel and said, let me go back to where I was.
So, that's an interesting analogy in terms of the darkness to light, right? Having said that, how could one identify a mentor, right? How do I know who should be my mentor? How do I pick a mentor? How do I go about it?
Trust. Somebody that you can implicitly trust. A mentor is not necessarily somebody who's going to be really, it's not somebody that you necessarily want to emulate and become like, right? You want to be able to trust them enough to know that, hey, I can share everything without prejudice or being judged. That's a really good mentor to have, right? And when you have a mentor, hold on, grab on. That ride is going to last you for a long, long time. Just have that good mentor relationship. It makes a huge difference. It's an incredible difference. So trust, implicit trust, number one. Number two that I would look at is somebody who can be dispassionate, who has no ulterior motive, right? And one of the rules that I still follow today, even today, is right now I don't mentor people who are part of my food chain, if you will. How much ever I try to be unbiased, it's impossible to do.
Yeah.
Right? I will always have something which is, some hidden thing over there, right? Agenda, if you will. No, you need to have somebody who
There
is
is
a
some
mentor.
kind of a subconscious bias.
Absolutely, right? I would actually call it an unconscious bias, but nevertheless, it's a good point that you talk about because that's an undercurrent, right? And that undercurrent can be really harmful, right? So you need to get somebody who is, meets the criteria, trust, and has absolutely no bias, right? The fact that they may not be in the same domain as you are in makes no sense, makes no difference. Because their job is really to help you see the light, right? In the room, the dark room, right? We talked about the candle.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that the candle and say, go there. No, then that's like a coach.
Coach, yeah.
This is more like, hey, here's all the opportunities, right? And, and what I found about my mentor was like, my mentor kept pushing me and asking me like, no, why do you want to do that? Right? It was more internally, learning internally. Right? I learned more about myself through my mentor than I would have otherwise.
So would it be right in saying your emotional quotient kind of increases as part of this because you are reflecting a lot more inward and looking at, I think it increases the awareness of self-awareness itself, right? Would it be something of those lines?
I think so. I haven't really thought about it that way, but you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, it's also about how well you know yourself, right? How confident are you about the things, especially the areas that you're not aware of, right? I mean, somebody shines a light, it's an uncomfortable feeling in that point.
Yeah.
But recognizing that, hey, that's an area that I think I need to go investigate, explore, maybe there is something in that.
Yeah, interesting. So you have an interesting motto, right? Which I kind of like it. Right, you kind of look at what is it? Is it, I could be wrong here, but just correct me, right? So I think impossible just means it takes a little longer. Did I say it right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Can you little dive into it? This is very interesting for me, right? I think when we think about it, it has a lot more deeper meaning to what it means. Right, and when I heard it and I started thinking about it, I felt there's a lot more it adds to, right, than just like a cool statement, right? So when did you realize about it and how did you come about this whole motto?
That's a difficult one. I honestly don't know when was the eureka moment that this happened for me, but I would say that this happened pretty early in my corporate career. Because what happened was we were working in different areas where there's always 10 people to tell you how things cannot be done, right? And that was very pulling down, negative. It just didn't seem right, and that's not the culture I was used to. When you're an entrepreneur, you're looking to figure out how to go around that problem, right? There is you're always going to see a problem.
Yeah.
You either go over it, underneath, beside it, somehow you'll figure out a way to go get around it. My first experience was, we have a problem. And we're all looking around waiting, right? And
for someone to address it.
Yeah, for somebody to address it. Like, and I was looking around and thinking, hey, wait a minute, what gives it? Like, no, and so that was a turning moment for me. And then that's when I figured out, like, no, hey, there is a lot of these boundaries that people define for themselves. And then when I looked at my entrepreneurs and experiences and the things that we have done in that period of time, which for a lot of people would have been impossible. Right? We did take a little longer to do it. So for me, that stayed like my mantra, right? So at the end of the day, impossible takes a little longer. So you go with that mindset, right? You go with the mindset saying that, okay, don't know how to figure out how to solve this problem. There is a problem today. We'll figure it out, right? I mean, let's go work the problem. Break it down to smaller pieces. I mean, there is a methodology in that, right? But it starts with the first step, the attitude.
Yeah. So, in other words, it could be, take action, right?
Absolutely.
Even if it is imperfect action, just take action, right? Take many imperfect action and you'll become perfect at some point in time.
True.
But I think it's about taking action rather than, sitting and thinking about it, right? Where you kind of not move forward then.
I keep telling people, right? I mean, if you're going to fall, at least fall forward. You made that much progress.
Yeah.
But don't just sit around and hang around and wait for something to happen, right? No, that's just silly.
Yeah. So you kind of currently manage a large global organization, engineering organization. and it has its own set of challenges as you deal with people, and these are knowledge workers in the technology space working on the most advanced thing, right, that could be coming 3 years, 4 years, 5 years from now. So everyone is super smart, right? Everyone is knowledgeable. Everyone is aware of a lot of things that is happening with AI and all the technologies come up. So there's a whole lot of things that, you know, people are exposed to. How easy, difficult, challenging it is for you to manage the current set of, you know, people, right? And, you know, if you can just talk a little bit around the details of what are the challenges that you have.
Simplest thing to do is to have smarter people than you working for you, right? As a team, if you seem to be, or you are the smartest person in the room, my opinion is you have a problem, right? So surround yourself with people who are far, far better than you in their own niche areas that they are, thinking. So when you build a team of people that are super, super smart, that impossible takes longer becomes shorter, right? It becomes much easier to handle, much easier to deal with. And it's important for you to recognize as a leader that you are not the person that's actually going to solve the world's problems, right? You need to find the people who can solve the really tough problems and give them the right problems to go work on, right? And work with it. Navigate. Again, goes back to the mentor example, right? In the dark room, even a candlelight can be pretty bright, right? So what is the thing that you can do to help that whole organization move? And that comes to the second part of what a leader should do, right? You're right, I do have a large organization across the world, different problems, everybody's got different issues. Not going to go stress about a particular problem in a particular place, because there are people who know how to deal with that. Now, if the problem escalates and becomes a larger problem, step in, figure out what needs to happen, move on. Right? Figure it out and move on. But largely speaking, when you have such a large group of people that are really, really focused on the people, right? The 3 Ps, people, process, and then programs, right? Focus on the people. And you build great people, have great people around you. Awesome. There is no problem that it's going to stump you or derail you or something of that sort. No.
But, you know, you're a seasoned leader. You know, let's say a budding leader or a leader who just, you know, entered into the leadership space. You know, how should he be looking at this world in terms of saying, I need to have smarter people than me, right? It kind of puts you into a little uncomfortable space because there's a fear of someone being overpowered, right? I'm just transitioning, or I've just transitioned into this leadership role. Everything is new. I thought I was a powerful guy in terms of technology awareness and all of this stuff. And when the transition happened, I see a very different world, right? So I'm like, to a large extent, powerless, right? In terms of my core deliverables that is there. I'm relying on people to do things. And in that sense, you know, if I'm having someone who's really smarter than me, right? It kind of, in the initial phases at least, till they transition, it gives a very uncomfortable feeling, right? So how would one navigate this period in terms of, you know, getting one transitioning into the leadership and seeing this exposed to them, and for people who are in the system but still holding on to that, saying, hey, if I get this guy who's smarter than me, then I'm in trouble, right? How would they kind of, how should they be looking at this problem, and how they should be navigating this?
So you remember you talked earlier about the importance of EQ, right?
Yep.
And that comes back to this particular point, because if you know the value that you're bringing to the organization and you're not clear about it, or you have a problem, right? You need to be very clear that now I've got 5 people, 10 people around me. Each of them are really, really good and super smart in their areas, absolute reference points and stuff like that. But you also need to bring something to the party, right? You can't be the one who's mooching off of everybody else. Then you'll have this problem that you're talking about, like this fearfulness, uncertainty, anxiety, all of those emotions is going to come in. But if you don't, and you know, okay, this is what I'm bringing to the table, this is the value that I bring into the table, then you don't have that problem. You shouldn't have that problem. Now, this is where a good mentor will help. Because a mentor is the one who's going to help you understand that, hey, you're going through this anxiety for no reason. Because if you're going to operate at N-1 and then compete with somebody else, not the right investment of time. So getting all of these things in context and getting all these approaches is what a good mentor will help you with, right? And that's where the emotional quotient of this has to be absolutely reinforced.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're going to have difficult time.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that you're bringing time and again the mentor thing, right? It sort of emphasizes the importance of, or I would just go by a sweeping statement of saying any successful people, there needs to be a mentor, right? And someone who's guiding them and taking through them. So, so that's great, right? On similar lines, if you with the current organization that you have and with your experience and with the technology advancement that we see with AI coming in and all of that stuff, what is that one should be focusing? Let's say for this conversation, let's look at mid-career, right? What is the focus that one needs to have at that level from a growth perspective?
So that's a very large question, right? So if I look at it from, even if it's not an industry specific, I want to take this out of the tech stack, if you will, right? And we'll come back to the tech stack, but if you look at, take it outside the tech stack, you need to understand what are the vectors that your business is looking at, right? What are the key value propositions that your organization is working on? What's the differentiation? How are you adding value to that core purpose that the business is working on? Once you've got that aligned, done, then all of those activities that you're working on and the tech stack, could be people, could be process, could be whatever, right, needs to align with that. It's pointless if you're going in a tangent somewhere else and you might be doing the coolest thing, but it doesn't align with what the organization needs at that particular context or that particular time, you're going to crash and burn.
So what you're saying is it's important to understand the purpose, right? And recognize what value you can bring in alignment with the purpose.
Absolutely.
Right? And then focus on the execution elements, right, which can aid to add more value, right, and move in that path.
And focus on the execution pieces is a variable according to, in my opinion, is a variable according to your career position, if you will, right? So in the early years of your career as a leader, you're looking to build processes, to bring repeatability, consistency, all of those things, right? As you go more senior into your career, you're now looking at, okay, how am I seeing around the corners? What are the risks that are there that can put me out of business, right? Then once you go even more senior, then you're going, okay, hey, what's the next growth? Where's the next hilltop, right? If you're not thinking about it, nobody else is, right? Then the whole organization is just figuring out how to play in the mud. No, you got to go figure out what the next hilltop is going to look like. So depending on your career position, if you will, or where in the organization stack you are, it makes a difference, right? So how much of time? So absolutely important to recognize that you align. Absolutely important to recognize that you have the right people, right? And then your value needs to be very clear, right? This is what I bring to the party, right? And there are 3 other people, 5 other people, 10 other people, each bringing a skill set that is so unique and far, far better than you could ever possibly do. What an awesome team.
And you sort of referred to earlier on the experience part of things. I know, and I also know that you kind of believe heavily into the bag of experience, right? So can you touch a little bit on bag of experience and the whole, the importance of it, right? As to how it's going to help, why one should be investing into bag of experience, and what does it mean, by the way, right? So can you just touch upon that?
So think about a situation as a leader, right? If you are always exposed to things that you have seen 100 times before, you've experienced 100 times before, then where is that value proposition that you're going to bring to the table? Because what's going to happen is, hey, you know what? If this is the same problem happening 5 times again and again and again, the problem is elsewhere. Because why is the same thing happening 5 times? Go fix that, right? So you're always in a very sort of repetitive place, and that's not good for a leader, right? So you've got to go look at saying that, hey, if I need to create new experiences so that when something new comes at me, I am not flabbergasted. It goes back to the point I talked about earlier where impossible takes a little longer. So you've tried, okay, you know what, last time I got a shock of 29,000 volts, it almost killed me, but I learned never to do that again.
Yeah.
Right? If you know, I stopped wearing.
Maybe try out with a 14,000.
I stopped wearing chains. So like,
Oh, wow.
So I used to wear a chain around my neck, and that thing went and hit a 27,000 volt transformer, and boom. But the lesson I learned from that is don't wear chains. So the thing is this, that experience has taught me so many things, right? But the fact is, when you may never experience exactly the same thing again, right? And it's a bad thing if you keep experiencing the same thing again and again, right?
Yeah.
But if you see something slightly different, you know that I've seen something like this in the past somewhere, right? So this is not alien to me. I'm comfortable with this, right? I'm not like, oh my God, situation. Like, no, hey, this sounds interesting. Maybe that sounds familiar to something like I've done. And that bag of experience, you can go back into the toolkit of yours and say, hey, rummage through it and find what makes sense. That's the thing that comes closest. No, boom.
So what it also means is going back to your earlier experience on the Army, what Army has taught you, what the entrepreneurship has taught you, right? And what you're saying, bag of experience, is also related to kind of don't hesitate, right? Don't wait for someone to solve your problem or the problem that is there. You go and explore, right? And also it comes back to the thing of taking action, right? Do not worry about perfect actions. Just go and take those imperfect actions, make things moving, right? In the process, you are going to learn, you're going to discover, and when you put experiences together, right, you're going to come up with something. You're going to either discover something or you're going to innovate. Right?
Absolutely.
So that's cool. That kind of takes to the other point of mine, which I know about you. You are kind of fascinated about innovation, right? Or I can say obsessed with innovation, right?
Okay.
So why is innovation so important for you? And what has that led to?
So I bore very easily.
Okay.
In my career, I've moved from an entrepreneur to things largely because I got bored of doing things, right? So for me, innovation is not about eureka moments. The innovation could be about how you use a simple thing, right? I mean, how can you use a fork in an interesting way? When you're hanging a picture on the wall, can you use a fork to guide the the thread behind that? Because you can't see the thread. Otherwise, you're like feeling around.
Yeah.
You're trying to do all kinds of things. Hey, you know what? There are other tools that you can go use there, right? So innovation is not about the big eureka moments, and I've gotten that into my DNA, I would call it, because I would love to go and experiment and everything. So I'm not afraid of failure per se, because I'm trying to gain that experience. So I've experienced, experimented a lot of things in different contexts. But the beauty of all of those experiments was that some worked, some didn't. Actually, I would say most didn't, some worked. But the fact is, each one of them gave me experiences, right? And that's what that bag of experiences I keep talking about, right? It's just fascinating when you start learning how big a toolkit you have.
And for the reference that you just made about folk and stuff like that, another incident comes to my mind is you're also obsessed with getting into the details, right? You kind of go into, I still remember there is an incident where, I had experienced with Vivek, where he sort of started getting into a minute detail, right? He's kind of, the difference between the glass and the table out here is about 2 mm, right, and needs to be 1 mm, right? Why is that level of detailing? I mean, what is the trigger behind it, and why do you think that way? I mean, it's like, for me, it's like, okay, this is like 2 mm, it's okay, but what does 1 mm do, and why is that so much important?
It's a habit of mine, okay, and I don't know if it's a good habit, bad habit, don't know. It's just a habit, right? So for me, the fact is, if I have to work with people on things that we don't know about, right? It's a bit of an unknown thing. I need to be able to spend that time on details. For me, it's attention to detail. It's not about it whether it's 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters, or whatever, right? I need to have the macro picture. I also need to understand the micro picture as well, right? But I'm not going to be obsessed about the micro picture, but I need to be aware of it. And that's why the 1mm thing that you talked about, for me, it's like, it doesn't matter that it's actually 1mm. Would it make a difference if it's 1 or 2 mm? No, but the fact that I observed that it is so much is something like part of the mental training, if you will. Right?
Yeah, and that's why I'm curious about it, right? It's like, yeah, it's like 2 mm, okay, but getting into that detail, you said whether it is good or bad, I don't know about it, right? But having said that, has this habit of yours actually helped you, right, in your career? And if so, if you could just...
I'll give you some examples where it has actually helped me. So in one of the projects that I was working on in the past, we were designing RFID readers, and from years ago, I'm talking about like 20 years ago, nobody had done it in India. So the question was at that point in time was, hey, do we have the technology to do it? Do we have the ability to do it? Do we have the skills to manufacture it? Don't know, but we're going to try it out, right? So get into the details. What does it need? Right from the plastic that is required, from the tooling required for the plastic, to the manufacturing processes. I had to understand the details of it, because like I said, the first response that you normally would get is, don't know, can't be done, right? And when you demonstrate to your team that, I know 60% of the stuff that's required. I don't know 100%. I know 60%. It's better than 0%, right? So I know about 60%. I'm learning, right? 60 will go to 65, and that attention to detail, right? There are 10 things, 15 things that you need to be aware of. When you start putting all of them together, that's when projects succeed, right? Because if you go back and say, okay, we need to make an RFID reader, and I go back to my room and I can come back a month later and we'll be still talking about it. This way things move, right? So, and like I said, right, if you have the attention to detail, the plus side of it is also there, right? There is a plus and a negative side. I'll be honest with you, there is a plus and a negative. The positive side of this is, like I said, right, it allows for breaking down complex problems. The negative side of it sometimes is you might get into a rat hole.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm starting to operate at the N-1, N-2 level, and that the engineer who's supposed to be doing this is like, he's like sitting and sipping a cup of coffee and watching me do it, not the best use of my time, right?
Yeah.
So that is also a bad thing. So you've got to recognize how far do you go with this.
So Vivek, when do you think, I know you said that you need to get into details to a certain extent, but when do one knows, as a leader, when do you decide, or how do I decide that I need to stop?
So it's a bit of a touchy-feely thing, right? So you've got to know, and that's where your team, because remember we started the premise that my team is a very, very smart team, right?
Yeah.
At what point the team is able to self-sustain, understand where you're going, what is your intent, your purpose, and what problem are you trying to solve, and you see them on a self-automated mode, then at that point you're going to become a hindrance. So you can just get away from there, right? So you, as a leader, you need to recognize and have the tactility to work with your organization and your team well enough to know how far is that, right? How much is too much? And sometimes, you do make mistakes. I go back to the point we started off with, right?
Yeah.
You have to be unafraid or not be scared of trying. Sometimes you might go too much in depth, learn from it, back off. But if you don't try, you don't know where the edge is.
So are there moments in your career where you've kind of crossed the line, if I may so call, right? Going a little more deeper than it is needed. And if so, what has that resulted to? Has there been anything that has been, impactful from a team functional standpoint? Or it is like, hey, it all worked out good enough, you really sensed it and you kind of backed off?
No, so remember when we started, I said like, no, I have made boo-boos. I have made plenty of boo-boos, and sometimes some of the boo-boos include, I've actually gone and written code. I've sat with engineers and written code. And the guy whose defect that I was fixing the defect, and that guy is going having coffee and snacks and relaxing, right? I'm not worried about the relaxing and the coffee part, but it's a learning opportunity that was missed.
Yeah.
Right, and I think I took I took that away from that person, right? And that was wrong.
Yeah.
So the issue is not about, was a catastrophic failure or something like that happened because of it. Rarely will happen like that. But a lot of times what happens is you get into the way and you slow down the whole velocity of the team, efficiency of the team, all bad things happen, right? So I have made boo-boos like this.
So what I get out of this is there are two parts to this, right? I think from a leadership standpoint, you need to be self-aware to realize that you've gone a little into the space, and then you need to back off quickly from there. And at the same time, I think as an engineer or someone who's actually writing the code, his career is also needs to be on the growth path, right? He also needs to learn. So he shouldn't shy away by saying, okay, my manager is doing this job, so let me go off and have a sip of tea, like you said. Instead, he might want to either learn from the leader itself and understand what is happening, or he could really say, I got the point, right? Now let me go and do it, right? So that way there is a share. And I think that is, would you agree with me if I say that that's the kind of relationship that one needs to have between a leader and an engineer or a subordinate, where they are mutually, are able to share their views, openly share their views, and also accept that, yeah, I think I'm going a little over, I need to back off, versus, hey, this is my job and I need to do it, and kind of do it.
Oh, I completely agree with you, right? And as a leader, the ability for you to be able to connect with your team members is not only one way, it's a two-way street, right? So the ability for you to have the tactile capability, if you will, that is so important. The moment you bring up that wall, you're going to lose a lot of stuff. The best situation would be if your teammate, whatever, came back and said like, hey, got it, go away. I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
Right? That's the best thing. Sometimes happens very often, sometimes it doesn't happen that way. But at the end of the day, if you can sort of mold your organization to go down that path, wherein everybody's comfortable enough to question, right? You probably might have heard me talk about this in the past. Like if I'm stupid, call me stupid, but I'm going to ask you why.
Yeah.
Right?
Fair enough.
Yeah, and I don't have that conversation because because the color of my shirt or something like that. No, that's not good. But
sure.
Hey, I'm willing to learn. But that's that freedom that you need to have.
Yeah.
And
so, I want to pivot a little bit, from the topic of what we're talking into technology and leadership. But I think you've also contributed from a national, perspective in terms of the data center space. Would you like to touch a little bit on that space? Because I think that was an interesting area in terms of what was happening. The data center world is kind of, exploding given the way digitization is happening in India. So, I believe that, your contributions onto it was very critical, an important space. So can you throw some light in that space?
Sure. So context is important, right? About 7, maybe 8 years ago, the data center industry in India was very nascent, right? We were doing things for the sake of doing things. Was that the right way of doing things? Is that the most efficient way of doing things? Wasn't the highest priority. And especially when your customer is willing to pay the exorbitant bills that they are seeing, nobody felt the pinch. So the priority of getting this right was relatively very low, as long as it got done, right? So process of driving efficiency somewhere far behind, right? It was always, you've been also in the data center thing, right? It's always uptime.
Yeah.
I don't care how much I need to put into it. Uptime is the most important thing. A revelation happened about 6, 7, 8 years ago when people realized, hey, you know what? We've solved the uptime problem to a large extent, but are we doing it efficiently? And that's when technology as a partner came into play. And I was lucky to be in that space. I go back to that experimenting example I keep talking about, because I was experimenting with a lot of things in the past. So when the opportunity came with the IGBC, the Indian Green Building Council, the opportunity came saying, hey, you know what, can we formulate some things for our brothers and sisters in this industry a set of guidelines, if you will,
Yeah.
right? You try and do these things, or at least look at these metrics or measure these things. What you don't measure, you don't improve,
Yeah.
right? So what are the things that you needed to do? So we did that, and we set up a bunch of guidelines. We did a lot of activity. Even today, to this date, I'm talking about things that happened about many, many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
People still talk to me about some of the stuff that we experimented with,
Yeah.
right? Liquid cooling as an example. Today, it's getting pretty popular
Yeah,
in India now.
yeah, liquid cooling is becoming mainstream now, right?
Absolutely, right? So there was a time when somebody said, liquid in the data center,
Yeah.
are you mad?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, even the coffee cup will get outside someplace, right? No.
True,
Things
true.
have changed so much now.
Yeah,
right?
we've
So
come a long way from not entering data centers with shoes and chappals to all the way now where we are talking about having liquid inside and having servers inside that liquid, right? So
you
it's
remember
kind
the jacket that used to be kept outside the data center,
of
right?
data center, yeah.
So because it's like 18, 17 degrees centigrade
True,
inside and
true.
like or 12 degrees in some places, and you have to wear a jacket.
Yeah,
The server doesn't get faster if it runs at 12 degrees. That
True,
doesn't make sense.
true.
But hey, that's how we did it.
yeah,
But that was just so inefficient. I mean, looking back, it seems silly.
yeah.
But things
Yeah.
have changed dramatically since then.
True.
And it's good.
And I'm glad that you contributed to it, right? And I think you were part of it, and that sort of
A
certainly
lot of good
has-
experiences.
yeah, yeah. So good. So, in your personal experience, and I think we touched on a lot of leadership topics out here. Who has been your inspirational leader, and is there someone you've met in personal or?
I don't think I have a single inspirational leader because I'm of the opinion that there are inspirational leaders in different fields, right? I don't necessarily believe all of them are like molded into one
Sure.
one place, right? So if you ask me, is there a single person? Probably difficult for me to do
So
that.
maybe look at it in this way, right? Who are the leaders you look up to?
That's a good question. Okay, many. Elon Musk comes to mind for his incredible thinking and fearfulness, right? Or rather, lack of fearfulness. Right? He just doesn't.
Just does it.
He just does it, right? That's one guy I really admire over there. I had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Abdul Kalam, and it was a very brief meeting. We met. He had a meeting with all of the young engineers. Actually, I was an outside contractor at that time. The young folk, the young people working on on one of our defense projects. Shan't name that, but nevertheless.
Sure.
So he wanted to meet with all of us, and so we had a 15, 20-minute meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But that 20 minutes will remain with me for the rest of my life.
And this is during your early
Days.
entrepreneurial
This is
days,
entrepreneurial
right?
days, yes.
Okay.
And that, like I said, that 20 minutes will remain with me for all my life for two simple reasons. His humility, and we talked about EQ, right?
Yeah.
There's a guy who has EQ in mountains. Like his quantum of EQ that he's got is like ridiculously high. And the ability for him to connect with you at an individual level, right? We were about 10, 12 people in the room, but he connected with each one of us. And like I said, that's fascinating for me. And as a leader, that's so important, right?
Yeah.
The humility that he had, in spite of the position that he held, mind-boggling.
Yeah, I would just pick on that, right? Because this is so very important that, either, students who are graduating or, early entrants to kind of, especially focus on this point that you just mentioned, to kind of have a mentor, to reach out to people at this early ages. Because I can see that because you kind of met people like Dr. Abdul Kalam, having mentors, there are very key tenets that I would say for a successful person to have, right? If you have to have a formula, I think these are all the check boxes that you need to kind of fill up, and one of that is really meet out these folk, have inspirational leaders, right? Look up to people who you don't have to really look and talk to them. And today, it's also, the world has changed, right? I think there is so much of social media, so much of digital connect that we have, where you don't have to meet a person, right? Like you met Abdul Kalam, fortunate enough to get at the early days. need not be the case today, right? With you want to talk to Elon Musk, you can have a chat with him, right? Ask him the right question, and I'm sure he's going to respond back if it rings a bell, right? So I think it's easy to connect to a lot of people, and everyone should take advantage of that, right? One thing that instead of just swiping the social media and spending all the time, one needs to kind of look at some of these learnings and kind of look at it, because it's going to shape their life, right? And it's going to shape quite a bit. Do you agree on that?
What bugs me, absolutely, right? What bugs me a lot, I would say, is that when people tell me like, oh, I was not able to do something. And my question usually to them is, what have you tried? Have you even tried? Are you convinced that you have tried everything? In this day and age, when somebody tells me like, no, I don't have access to something, it basically tells me they haven't tried hard enough.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I find it hard to believe that something which has no access to. You may not get it on day one, minute one, whatever, right? But you work on it, you will get it. But the key is work on it, right? Stay on it.
So I'll go back to the earlier question, right? You spoke about discipline and regime. In addition to these two factors, do you follow any rituals as such? Do you have a daily rituals?
Yep.
And has that impacted you? Can you just
I invest close to about 10% of my time just studying, learning and unlearning, learning and unlearning, learning and unlearning. It's the amount of information that's available out there. And I don't just say data, it's information. It's distilled data that's available out there. There is no real excuse for you to not reach out and get it, right?
Yeah.
So I do have a regime. I spend a good amount of time still studying a lot. I'd actually go say, my calendar's blocked off, right? I actually have slots on my calendar where I keep blocking off time. Okay, this is my study time. That is as important as time that I'm spending with some big deal somewhere.
Yeah, this seems to be something like what corporates follow, right? There is a 10%, 15% R&D investment. So similarly, you're looking at
this is my own R&D.
Your own R&D investment, right? So that's kind of interesting. Now, having said that, I think you referred to learning, unlearning pattern, right? So learning is something that is good, right? And I think most of them would get it, I'm assuming, right? But
not an easy assumption to make, but nevertheless.
Yeah, I mean, that's another day, a full topic to talk about another topic, right? But having said that, what I would be curious is, how do you unlearn?
Oh, that's I always get that question from all of my mentees. It's habit. It goes back to regime, right? How often are you conscious that you should not be doing something? So it doesn't work. It's not like a switch or a tap you can just turn off and it stops.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't happen that way. So it starts with you recognizing that I need to stop doing something, whatever it is, A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
So if my regime says I need to stop doing C, I continue doing A, B, and D, I just can't turn it off. But the fact that you recognize that I need to stop doing C, and when you're doing C, when you're acting and trying to do that activity of C, you recognize, oh crap, I shouldn't have done that, right? And you keep doing that to yourself. You keep reminding yourself. Over time, that C goes lower on your priority list. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it, which I found personally very, very effective for a lot of the things, not for all the things, but for a lot of the things, is I find somebody for whom that C is an aspirational value. Right? So you remember we talked about earlier when you get people who are better than you and smarter than you and everything else. If there is a C that I can pass off to somebody else and say, hey, you know what? You take this and you run with this. And if that person does it better than I'll be silly trying to catch up with C. So then I will just take it off of my list of things. Right? So find somebody who can do that C better than you. Right? And then that's what makes you unlearn it and say, you know what? That capacity has been freed up. I can then focus on something else. Awesome. I found that working very effective. It doesn't work for everything, but it does work for a lot of things.
Awesome. I'm sure there is, you've passed on a wealth of information out here, right? And it's going to be pretty helpful. As we hit the end of the podcast, right, I just want to make sure. One of the sections that we have as part of this is we kind of pass on the questions That's been given out from previous leaders, and so do you get an opportunity to write a question to the next leader who comes onto the show, right? So, let me go through and ask you that question.
Sure.
Right? What are the 5 key challenges as a leader you foresee with either your organization or the industry in general, right? Yeah, you could pick, let me know which one you're addressing, but you could pick any one of those, either your organization.
Yeah, sure. 5. So I don't know about 5 things, but one of the big things that I'm seeing that our industry, if you will, is we've gotten complacent.
And when you say our industry, you are referring to IT?
The tech industry.
The tech industry,
the tech
okay,
industry,
in general.
Right?
Yeah.
In general, the tech industry has become very complacent. Largely because we've been used to seeing shifts of technology and inflection points taking 10 years. Right? So there was plenty of time to get acclimatized and adjust to the changes. That is not going to be the case moving forward. The time from gestation to action to all of that has shrunk dramatically. So you don't have the luxury of in the past where you could go and say, now I can push out this learning aspect to next year.
Yeah.
No, not really.
Yep.
Right? The tsunami is coming. Right? So you've got to be conscious, and that's where one of the frustrations that I feel is that both the older generation of people, I'd like to say myself in that category, but we have found it difficult to do it.
Yeah.
Right? So that is one. The younger generation has a different problem, but the outcome is still the same. They want everything tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? So they get frustrated very quickly. That loop is very, very small. Can be better.
So operating at 2 different ends, right? The spectrum
But the
is
problem
ends
is still
of
the
the
same.
spectrum. Yeah.
The net problem is still the same, right? You're not prepared.
Yeah.
So that for me is one big thing that I see as frustrating.
Cool.
The second thing that I see, and I don't know about 5, okay, so it's going to be tough to go.
Sure,
with 5.
it's okay. I mean, you
Yes.
say what you think is the top, right?
Yeah,
It
so
need not
this-
be 5.
Yeah, so this was a big one for me. I see that consistently happening. The second thing that I see is in our industry, again I go back to the industry example. Look, let me take a step back. 20 years ago, we struggled to get data. So a lot of the learning was about acquiring data or getting access to information. And the person who got access to the information had an advantage. In today's world, access to information is ubiquitous. It's there to everybody. So that edge is gone.
Yeah.
But I think we just sat back on it, right? Instead of going on to the next plane, next hilltop, we haven't taken that advantage. Things have now changed to a certain extent now. We'll have to wait and watch with this whole AI, generative thing, AI. I mean, you call it whatever you want, right? At the end of the day, I look at that as a tool.
Yep.
Right? So I can choose to use a really sharp knife and cut some vegetables. Or I can choose to use a piece of cardboard and try and cut the same vegetable, and I can crib as much as I want. The smart person will use the sharp knife,
Yep.
understands how to use the knife, because if you don't know how to use a knife, you're going to probably cut your fingers off.
Yep.
So it's a tool.
Yep.
So how do you use this tool to your advantage? How do you partner with this tool? That is also a little. I think we are late to the business, if you will, or that space. There have been few outliers, but generally we've been a bit slow, right? And I think that's the second thing which I think goes back to what I talked about. Now we are so casual about things, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. And the third thing which I personally, this is a very outside of the tech industry space, okay? So I think what's happened is we have not given enough credit to the younger generation. And I know I said this, I'm kind of contradicting myself because now I did talk about the short loops that the younger generation has, but the younger generation does not have the problems that you and I had.
Yeah.
So they start off at a very, very different plane, and we don't appreciate that. I think I'm guilty of it myself. Now, even in my own teams, when I interact with the younger generation of folks, I see myself now having those filters in my head, and I realized, crap, that's my problem. It's not their problem. Those guys have a huge advantage that we don't understand and we don't appreciate enough.
True.
So for me, that has been the third thing that I would say my generation, if you will, I'm not trying to now reduce my guilt in this whole thing. I'm as guilty as charged, but the reality is that is an area that I think we have not given enough credit to the younger generation. They have a different set of problems to deal with, right? And I think they're dealing it pretty smartly. We just haven't connected the dots together, right?
Yeah, and I think it's also to the earlier point that you made, right? We are operating at two different extremes, right? So as we find a middle path, it's going to be a lot more productive on the whole. But I think since we are operating, and I think it's an opportunity, while the youngsters kind of pick up and they have got their own job to do, there's also a sense of responsibility with the existing crowd, right? Who are really carrying those senior leadership roles to kind of understand, appreciate, and try to balance it out, right? So
completely agree.
All right, awesome. So the diary is yours. You can go ahead and write your question, whatever you think.
All right.
Right, and then we'll take it from there. Good enough. All right, Vivek, thank you so much. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Absolutely, Ramesh. It's been awesome talking to you and connecting with you again.
Thank you.